Carl Sagan famously said,
"We're made of star stuff."
Meaning the very atoms that make you and me up originated in stars that died billions of years ago. Now, this may seem far-fetched, but maybe it isn't. So in this episode, I'm going to answer the question, how do we know we are made of star stuff? Welcome to The Cool Thing About Science. I'm Matt Parker. Now, about 14 billion years ago, the universe began with a big bang. And as a result, only two of the elements we know from the periodic table were formed: hydrogen and helium. These also happen to be the lightest of all the elements, but that wasn't by chance. You see, as the universe rapidly expanded, there wasn't enough pressure to force those protons and neutrons into nuclei of more massive elements. It would take those lightest elements being fused together in order to make them. So as hydrogen and helium began to collapse under their own gravity and ignite, stars were born. Now, stars are huge nuclear reactors that take those hydrogen nuclei and fuse them together into helium nuclei. During this process, energy is released. So as stars become more dense, they also become hotter. Whenever you look up at the stars at night, or even at the sun during the day, that light you see is the energy being released as these nuclei are being squished together to make heavier elements. This process is known as stellar nucleosynthesis. As a star begins to run out of hydrogen, its helium undergoes the fusion process and is converted into carbon. Now, keep in mind that carbon is the element of life, which means it is the chemical basis of all known life forms. Without carbon, life as we know it would not exist. And without stars, carbon wouldn't exist. But still more elements are needed, so let's get back to fusion. Now, helium and carbon will be fused together to form oxygen, which is fused to produce neon, and then magnesium, and then silicon, and so on. These elements will continue to be fused together, forming even heavier elements, all the way to iron on the periodic table. Now, let me stop and say that the mass of the star determines the elements it can produce. Smaller stars, like our Sun, cannot produce elements much bigger than carbon. More massive stars can produce the heavier elements, but only up to iron. That's only element 26 on the periodic table, so where do all the other elements come from? For the other naturally occurring elements to be created require something more intense, more powerful, and way more explosive: a supernova. Once a star has burnt through its fuel, its demise is soon to follow. When elements are no longer being fused together, gravity overcomes that energy that's pushing the star outward, and the star collapses in on itself. The core becomes super dense until it can no longer pack protons and electrons any closer together. The further onslaught of particles as the star continues to collapse causes an eruption so enormous and so immense that only then can the elements from cobalt to uranium be created. As a star goes supernova, its explosion is brighter than an entire galaxy. All the elements that make it up get scattered and expelled into space. Only later do these particles get pulled together through gravitational forces as planetary systems are formed. When this happened billions of years ago, one of these planetary systems had a planet that just happened to form in a habitable zone around a new star. That planet was Earth. Like all the other planets, Earth is made up of those elements that were produced in the intense temperatures and pressures of a long dead star. And as the energy from that relatively new star that we now call the Sun poured onto Earth, those very same elements eventually led to the many forms of life, including you and me, that call Earth home. So there's a story about how the elements were formed and how we know we are made of star stuff. Without the stars to fuse those lighter elements into heavier elements, we wouldn't exist. You see, that's the cool thing about science. Using it, we have managed to determine the connections we have with everything in the universe. We're all just different arrangements of the same chemical elements that were created in the stars. So stay curious, keep asking questions, and continue exploring the world around you. And the next time you look up at the stars in the sky, appreciate the fact that many of them have died so that you may live. Thanks for watching.
The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself.